Give the intro again. Hello, guys. How's it going? Welcome to IndieCast from my apartment. And today I've called Raj over. And of course, we're going to be talking about the war that's happening in Iran right now between the United States, Israel, and of course the IRGC and uh, other related parties across the Middle East. It's almost been 31 days since the war started. And we thought that it is the right time for us and an appropriate time for us to record an episode with respect to that. So I'll let Raj take over.
Thanks, Jan Chandra,
Raj,
for
your
letting
pass.
us. Thanks, Jan Chandra, for letting us do it here today. We are going to speak about the ongoing military escalations, which are not stopping at the moment. There's a clear loss of objectivity in U.S. military policy. Uh, we are seeing more and more infrastructure-related attacks, and in the last few days, there has been speculation and very real military build up to corroborate that speculation that US Marine Expeditionary Units, or MEUs as they are called, are about to raid some actual ground assets in Iran. There has been
No,
speculation that they're going to raid the Kharg Island. There's been speculation that they might be used as some kind of convoy to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. Now, none of these are easy things to do, and putting in ground troops in any which way complicates things further because the IRGC or what remains of the Iranian leadership will look at it as a military escalation. So, Jay, let's get your views on that.
you know what? I really want to crack a joke. Now I know where Trump gets his views. Anyway, so I think this war is already turning out to be quite disastrous for the American military-industrial complex. We've seen some of their most high-tech equipment being hit. We saw an F-35A taking a direct hit. We've
Yeah.
seen so many of their other older aircrafts taken hit. We just
Yeah.
saw an AWACS aircraft, which is
Yeah.
considered to be the radar in the sky,
Yeah.
taking a hit and being completely destroyed.
Yeah. As an
So,
aside, I want to just add a bit of information here
yeah.
that an AWACS is what the Indians destroyed at the Bholari Air Base
Yes,
in
with it,
2025.
25 at
So
Op Sindoor as
we
well.
destroyed a Pakistani
Yeah.
AWACS as ground reports suggest. Sorry,
Yes,
Jay,
yes.
you.
So it's quite devastating for the American military industrial complex and the Americans in general. It is a war, I think, which most of the Americans didn't want.
Yeah.
Most of the Americans were against this war, and I think this has done a lot of damage to Trump's credibility as a president and as someone who okay, that's my son is here, so he is just
Yeah.
very excited to see all of us.
Yeah, we have a new
And
guest
we have a new
also.
guest for the first time.
Yeah, for
Welcome,
the
Rohan
first time
Jaising.
to Indicast. Hi, Ruru.
Hi, Ruru. Ruru,
He's
say hi.
also hi. Thank you. Thank you for
Ruru,
your
what's
gift.
your opinion on Iran? Anyway, so Trump, I don't think Trump has ever been this unpopular. And the problem here is now that he's lost a lot of popularity. He's lost a lot of.
We will keep getting welcome interruptions from Rohan, and
Uh,
we'll keep our conversation going as well. Jay.
yeah. Hmm. No, no.
Jay, keep going.
Anyway,
Yeah, sit with me, Ruru. Hello. All right. All right, Jay, keep talking. Yeah.
अभी राज थोड़ा दूर रखिए
हाँ.
बंद करिए we'll do it again. Please go close.
Guys, we are also here today recording in my nephew's area. So my nephew Rohan will keep adding some welcome comments, and he'll keep interrupting our conversation with his views. So please adjust as you watch this episode. Jay.
Yeah. So what I was saying was that because of this war, Trump has lost a lot of popularity even amongst his hardcore support, hardcore base, hardcore supporters base, like specifically the conservatives and other Republicans as well, who are not very comfortable with the idea of another unending war.
Yeah.
One of the primary reasons for Trump's popularity was that he didn't want Americans to get involved in unending wars. And here we are,
Dude, he promised
Americans
that to
exactly.
his support,
Yes,
core
yes.
support
So
base.
here we are, Americans getting involved in another long war where they don't clearly have any other objective. It has become so convoluted that Trump is going to the extent of saying that he's just interested in Iran's oil. I like the guy's honesty because unlike George Bush and the Americans in 2003 who were trying to sell their war as a way of somehow controlling the WMD program of Saddam Hussein. Here we have a person who's constantly changing goalposts.
But Jay, I
To
think
run,
that also further complicates a lot of things
yeah.
because we are seeing shifting US objectives repeatedly.
Mhm.
You first take a decapitation strike,
Mm.
eliminate Khomeini. Then you take out strikes saying that, okay, now we're actually going to attack further into the regime so that maybe there is some kind of expectation of a regime change from the skies so that people kind of come out and protest against the Islamic regime, which hasn't happened. Quite the opposite has happened. I think the regime is strengthened over time. The regime also happens to have a clear succession plan. So I think the Americans realized it and then very quickly shifted their objectives to clearing out. Sorry,
दूर
they quickly shifted their objective from making it about regime change or Iranian nuclear capabilities, and they effectively made it about clearing the Strait of Hormuz. Like 2 3 weeks ago, we were talking about Iranian nuclear capabilities. We were speaking of how we want to demolish their nuclear capabilities, and even even friends of Iran aren't super happy about Iran having a nuclear weapon. It's something that would make the entire West Asian region anxious. So I understand that it was always an anxiety triggering point for the Americans, especially also the Israelis, by the way, who set the American West Asia policy because Americans don't do anything in West Asia without Israeli
Of course.
approval or the Israeli vote. So you had a kind of fog around the capabilities that the Iranians had about their nuclear program, and in as an intent you decapitated their leadership, and now you're seeing retaliatory strikes all over West Asia, and the Iranians have effectively largely disrupted global trade and all of Strait of
Absolutely.
Hormuz, and now the objective is to just send in marines and escort ships going through Strait of Hormuz. So what exactly is the US government trying to achieve right now? Today, there was a tweet by Donald Trump pressuring the British government to get involved in their sort of convoy operations to clear the Strait of Hormuz. So these shifting posts are not really making sense anymore,
Yes.
and people are dying every day. Now, I'll just end this point by saying that the war is still in a beyond visual range aerial phase,
Mhm.
and already 12 American servicemen have
15.
lost their lives.
15.
15, if I'm to be corrected.
11 Israeli soldiers have been killed,
Yeah,
including in the operations
and
in
yeah,
Lebanon.
and even if for Donald Trump Iranian lives are not of that consequence, although Iranian loss of life anywhere is tragic, but I think the Americans need to start noting down that even their loss of life will go up as the escalatory ladder
Of
increases.
course.
So if you send ground troops to a difficult terrain like Iran, or even push them to seize the Kharg island,
Mhm.
I don't see the escalatory ladder. It's an escalation trap.
Mhm.
I don't know how the Americans will get out of this.
They cannot get out of it at all. And I think वो ये है कि खरग आइलैंड पे आएंगे तो वो लोग इतनी मिसाइलें गिराएंगे उधर से निकलना ही बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगा. अभी recently the Iranians have also come out and said that the nuclear proliferation treaty is not helping them at all, and it is something that they want to withdraw from. There are also rumors, not corroborated, but of course the Pakistanis want to feel relevant in this particular conflict, and why would they not? They are a powerful Muslim country with a significant population and also nuclear weapons, and they're trying
And
to
they
be
share a border
mediators.
with
They
Iran.
should share a border with Iran. Why would they not want to feel relevant? So there are rumors, not confirmed. Of course, I read it on social media. Might be totally false, but there are rumors that Pakistan is already providing them with some type of nuclear, hushed up with this nuclear knowledge, which they can eventually use in their
The
weapons.
Iranians,
Yes, weapons program. But of
I
course, far
I
fetched. It's far fetched.
I would push back on
Yeah,
that view because I think the Pakistanis get a lot of their support from
the
the
Americans.
Gulf Arab states
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
and I don't think the Gulf Arab states would be particularly pleased
But
if there
what
is
has
a.
stopped Pakistan from playing both the sides? They played both the sides during the American invasion of Afghanistan as well.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what I'm saying.
I think
That has somehow kept Pakistan relevant.
perhaps a loyalty to the Sunni
There is no
Wahhabi ideology,
loyalty. Oh,
perhaps.
come on. If they had any type of loyalty, they wouldn't have thrown Taliban under the bus.
Yeah, see, that's a very valid
Yeah.
point. I think that the Pakistanis effectively act many times in situation like this as an American vassal.
Hmm.
So I don't think that they would want to establish some kind of nuclear relationship with the
Absolutely,
Iranians
I agree.
because also as recently as last year, the Pakistanis have had a mutual defense treaty agreement sort of with the Saudis.
Yeah,
So you're and the Iranians are effectively at war with the
with the
Gulf
Saudis.
Arab states. You're not saying it, but you are effectively attacking the Saudi
Absolutely,
infrastructures
and
with Shahid
that's why I
drones.
said it was far fetched.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting piece of information because what if Pakistan decides to be helpful to Iran in this particular case? Because there have been times where Gulf Arab states, Iran, Pakistan have all collaborated together when it has come to conflicts which have involved quote unquote oppressed Muslim groups, particularly in Bosnia Herzegovina. It happened. I mean, you're right, but I still feel that. It is an interesting prospect. Like, what if Pakistan decides that hey, we want to help out this nation with whom we have centuries old cultural ties, because Pakistan also was essentially most of it India, and I still feel culturally it's still India. So if it has had such cultural ties with Persia, then that could probably
See,
trump
I think
the
that
Shia Sunni rivalry.
it's far fetched.
Of course, it's far fetched. That's what I said.
I
Hmm.
think that the Pakistanis have a natural relationship with the Gulf Arab states that goes back to the counterbalancing acts of the Iranian Revolution.
Hmm.
I keep coming back to the building of the King Faisal Mosque because the Gulf Arab states put so much money in Pakistan as a counterbalancing act to the Iranian Revolution. And I think that Pakistan effectively since then has been a Gulf Arab, as a result, American vassal. So I think that it's a risk that they won't ever take. The Pakistani army is also smart that way, that they won't rub the US intelligence apparatus the wrong way to that extent. I think the Iranian state apparatus, their Majli, their clerics are the principal rivals of the Israelis, and I don't see any US vassal or a US proxy kind of, okay, proxy is far fetched, state to sort of take that much of a radical turn. And you see this in evidence across history, that Pakistanis acted as the point of contact for the Americans.
Be it China
Yeah,
did.
yeah. Pakistanis have rented out their armed forces units to Gulf Arab states many times. Pakistanis have let the Americans place their military hardware in Pakistan a lot. They let the Americans use the unclear areas around the Durand Line to launch attacks against the Soviets. And also Pakistanis uh, let Americans funnel a lot of money into Pakistan as an effort to assist them in the war on terror, but somehow still managed to give a safe haven to Osama bin Laden. So I've always said that the Pakistanis are masterful manipulators, but I don't think they're that big risk takers here.
Yeah,
So yeah,
fair
back to
enough.
you.
I mean, I've always reminded our viewers that Pakistan played a key role in the dismantling of the Black September movement in Jordan, where they killed thousands of Palestinians.
Yeah.
So before the Pakistanis jump on this conclusion that only Israelis have been killing Palestinians, your establishment has also played a very important
Yeah.
role
Also, I
in
think
destabilizing the Palestinian movement.
ironically, also,
Yeah.
I think the division that was responsible for that was then being commanded by Major General Ziaullah,
Ziaullah,
who
exactly.
later became
Yes.
the
Again, the
dictator.
brotherly relations with the Arab monarchies.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that was another reason why after the Iranian Revolution, the the Ayatollah Khomeini, he started saying that the people in the monarchies of the Arab world also need to get up
yeah.
and start revolt, including the Sunnis. So
Mhm.
that is where probably Hamas is something which strikes out, because Hamas is probably one of the very few Sunni organizations that
That the
Iran support,
Iranians has
and
supported.
the reason behind it is that Hamas believed in a very similar
Yeah,
Islamic revolutionary concept.
yeah.
So that's where I feel that with respect to Israel, there could be some point where the Shia Sunni barrier could break, and who knows, some factions in Pakistan would
See,
be like, why not support
see,
them?
you're absolutely right over here, and I think this is exactly how the Iranians try to seek leadership in the Muslim world,
Yeah,
which is why I think, in principle, the Gulf Arab states started normalizing their relations with Israel, because Iranians reached such a dangerous degree of proximity with the cause of the Palestinians that they became the principal supporter of Hamas. The October 7th attacks, when they happened,
I think
people
Iran was involved in that.
people don't dude, there is no doubt,
Yeah,
without a support
yeah,
of an actual nation state, you cannot
yeah,
execute an operation of that kind. The Iranians have done something spectacular that modern military leaders don't do,
yeah.
and I'm not in any way justifying them. I'm a
Yes.
big critic of the Iranian state. I think many of them have made the world a dangerous place, but people like Qasem Soleimani, uh, and the Quds force, they were able to pull off a creation of such a huge axis of proxies that without being a geographical entity surrounding your enemies, you were still able to surround
Yeah.
them. You cornered the Israelis with some Hezbollah presence and Hamas presence. You fought the Saudis through the Yemeni Houthis, and you were able to kind of become a regional actor that made the entire West Asian region extremely anxious, especially American interests in that area, whether it was energy interests through the Gulf Arab states or whether it was the protection of the state of Israel. This entire exercise made the Americans extremely anxious. And to this day, the only power that really benefits from sustained weakening of Iran is, after all, Israel, and to a degree, obviously, the Gulf Arab
Yeah,
states.
I still feel that if the October 7th attack wouldn't have happened, I feel a lot of things in the Middle East would have been different right now. Because I think after the Abraham Accords, the Iranians were very nervous. They thought that if everything's normalized, then how are we going to put pressure through our axis of resistance against
Yeah.
Israel? And they were like, we're running out of time. And Netanyahu around that time was losing a lot of popularity. So
Mhm.
like this attack came at the right time. And you know what? I feel it helped Netanyahu a lot. He somehow gained a lot of popularity all over again.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, so like the thing is that even the prospect that Mossad might have had an idea about this attack is pretty plausible because essentially it is one of the best intelligence organizations on paper,
Yeah.
and you're telling me that this organization, IDF, which has been using this propaganda by stating that they're the best military force in the world, they've conducted such amazing attacks. How could they let an attack like this happen?
Yeah.
Number one, negligence. Number two, unpreparedness. Number three, they just did not think that they have the audacity to pull off something like that. Because
Perhaps, yeah.
whatever boundaries and whatever barriers that they had created, that was just meant for 10, 15 fighters. It
Yeah.
wasn't meant for like 2,000 Hamas
Yeah.
fighters to just enter like that.
Yeah.
So I think that was, I mean, politically it really helped Netanyahu
Yeah,
because it
and it
has helped his
was.
relevance.
Yeah.
But again, while we are criticizing Iran, that doesn't mean we are justifying Israel's
Yeah, and
retaliation.
I think
Listen to us. Yes.
it was a dangerously bold move on part of the
Yes.
Iranians. If they have
They
been
succeeded.
supporting
They
yeah,
succeeded.
they have been supporting Hamas, and it was a dangerous escalation even from their part, and then that led to an extreme political race to the bottom because there are moderate factions within Israel. There are moderate political forces within Israel. There are people who have believed in the two-state solution
Yes.
in Israel, and all of them have lost their voice.
Yeah.
So Iranians also very successfully,
Yes.
through Hamas, through Hezbollah, crowded out any voice of sort of a
Yeah.
reason. In there was a time of the Oslo Accords. There was a time of the Yitzhak Rabin,
Yeah.
the
Yasser Arafat.
Yasser Arafat era. There was a time where these people have shaken hands in front of the U.S. president. There have even been times, Jay,
Us.
when the Mossad agents have coordinated with the PLO authority police and arrested Hamas leaders
Palestinian
together.
Authority. Yeah.
Yeah. So when in the 1990s Tel Aviv saw a series of bombings, there have even been instances where Israeli intelligence was working with the Palestinian Authority to detain uh, Hamas leaders, and I think that's the closest you ever came to an actual legitimate functioning two-state. But unfortunately, the voices of extremes have been winning in West Asia for 30 years. Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. Netanyahu didn't do much to condemn it, to his great discredit. And I think Netanyahu's party kept gaining popularity after that, to the point that in Israel now, being even slightly anti anti-war or anti-destruction of Iran, or even slightly pro two-state solution, is seen as a grave, like a grave anti-national
The
sort of
funny thing
activity.
is that one of my friends he was telling me that the Jews who had actually migrated from parts of Eastern Europe, Northern Europe, erstwhile Prussia and all, those European Jews, they are actually very, very moderate and progressive. Whereas the ones from Middle East, the Moroccan Jews, North African Jews, Yemeni Jews, the Ethiopian Jews, the Sephardic Jews from Spain, they are the ones who are hyper radicalized. And in fact, Likud party and Netanyahu's party as well. Netanyahu's party, Likud party, I don't know.
Yeah.
So Likud party and like Ben Gvir's party,
Yeah.
like these organizations are extensively dominated by these factions. So
Yeah.
within Israel society, you also have to understand there are not one single type of Jews. There are multiple types. There are the Ashkenazis, there are the Sephardics. Sephardics are the ones who came from Spain. Ashkenazis are the ones who came from Eastern Europe, Northern Europe, former areas of Germany. Then you have the Moroccan Jews, you have the Yemeni Jews, you had the Jews who were living in the Palestinian Mandate, who used to speak Arabic before the creation of Israel. So you have those type of Arab Jews as well. So Israeli society is also very diverse, and on top of that, you have a significant Israeli Arab population, the Palestinians who did not move to West Bank or the Gaza Strip, who stayed within the confines of the country of Israel. So they are also a significant part of the Knesset. So yeah, it's a very diverse society, and with respect to that, there are different factions. There are the progressive factions. There are the hardcore right wing factions. Anyway, we had digressed a little bit. Coming back to the main war, it's been 1 month. It's been it's not stopping at all. Energy generating areas are being hit. Petroleum refineries are being hit. Haifa has been hit on the 30th. You've been seeing missiles. Of course, it's all BVR. It's all beyond visual range. You're
We've seen
seeing
Aramco hit
yes,
multiple times.
multiple
We've seen
times.
Aramco refineries being
And
hit.
now the Houthis have also decided to join in.
Yeah.
They've also started firing, and the Shahid drones are just outperforming themselves.
Dude, yeah.
And the thing is that now you've started seeing another type of proxy war happening. Like a lot of people were very, very paranoid, and they started saying, "Oh my God, third world war, third world war." But I think the level of destruction that the Second World War caused, after that, I think the humans in general have become very, very scared of bad, mutually assured destruction. So to come to that point, I feel we have entered Cold War 2.0.
I
And the
have
reason
to, yeah, go
the
on.
reason I say that is because now that the Russians and the Chinese have seen Americans get dragged into another unending war, they know that they don't have to get involved with America at all, and all they can do is just provide whatever intelligence that they can to the Iranians. That's why they've been hitting so accurately and give them all type of missile tech, whatever. And I'm sure a lot of missiles that the Iranians have branded as their own
Are Chinese
are
made.
Chinese.
Yeah, because they've been performing very well militarily. Yeah, I think that to the point that I also wrote this on my Substack, by the way, that
We'll put it in the link.
I think that I read somewhere that the Shahid drone is the new AK-47. That in the beyond visual range era, you need to have a low cost air drone which is highly destructive, and the unit economics is brutal. We've spoken about it. That a $20,000 to $50,000 Shahid drone is going to hit a area which is guarded by $1 million worth Patriot missile system, and that's going to start draining out Western air defense systems. And this is one thing that the Americans had to unfortunately learn the hard way in this conflict. I also realized that there's a huge there's a huge disruption of energy security around the world that has happened because of this conflict. And like we said, accurate targeting of the Shahid drone is also something that has targeted in energy infrastructure. It's targeted civilian ships a bunch of times. So now we need to understand that this disruption is not going to be solved without sustained confidence building efforts. Now, like you said, people are afraid of mutually assured destruction. We live in an era where diplomacy has its back channels. There are negotiating and mediatory efforts being pursued actively by multiple nation states at this moment, but diplomacy is not playing the role that it ideally should. So I think I kind of second your view that we are indeed entering a much more cold war like situation where implicit support is being provided maybe by the Chinese and the Russians to the Iranians, and they are striking targets fairly accurate to this day. I think you also have to understand that the Shahid drones are Iranian made, but their operability has been exercised by the Russians for the last 3 years.
They pioneered it.
And yeah, and I was listening to the podcast by Jake Sullivan, the ex-US National Security Advisor. Very good podcast. It's called The Long Game. And so ex-US National Security Advisor hosts it. It's called The Long Game, and on that, one of their guests was saying that we would be naive to think that the Russians aren't consulting the Iranians on the back door and allowing them to, operate the Shahid drone better. They have technical consultants from the Chinese, and the Chinese are probably helping them strike targets more accurately. And what that makes us realize is that the Chinese are probably enjoying the Americans show their unreliability to the whole world. They are enjoying the American government paint itself into a corner, and they are probably pushing this narrative that the Americans have got stuck in a situation which it doesn't know how to find its way out of, because the Americans are in an escalation trap. Chinese, by the way, are not escalators in principle. We share a border with them. We realized that in 2020, when our border dispute was going in a very tense area after the Galwan clashes, it made us realize that the Chinese are actually quite okay with extended periods of negotiations. So Chinese actually like to drain you out without warfare. Exactly. They hope India to weaken, but credit to our armed forces and our resolve that our position will not be weakened. But the Chinese prefer an approach where they talk to you, they engage in dialogue. The Chinese,
while at the same time
yeah,
sending most of the insurgent groups on the
yeah,
side.
the Chinese are not escalators. The Chinese are not, for example, those people who will negotiate with you and start bombing you at the same time.
To
And
their
I think,
credit,
yeah, to their credit and to the slight discredit of the Americans, because people
slight,
like, yeah,
massive discredit
yeah,
to the Americans.
people like me were sort of hoping for a good outcome of the talks with the Iranians, and now the Omanis and the Iranians have no reason to believe in another de-escalatory effort, because every time they've had negotiations, somehow the US Israeli axis has bombed them. Jay, back to you. Sorry
Raj,
for the long.
Raj, I would want to remind you of something that in our previous episodes from last year, I think this 2024, my bad.
Yeah.
This is before Trump came back to power. You were saying quite often that Trump would be the one who could, like, bring peace.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that now?
Dude, hilariously, I was proven wrong by him and by millions of other people. But I've read enough Scott Horton or heard enough Scott Horton to realize that there's a bunch of people within the US security apparatus who become appointed as assistant national security advisors, assistant deputy national security advisors. So there's like this whole technical bureaucracy in the US administrations that get absorbed from think tanks. Many of them are very hawkish people. I always think that they also put themselves into a trap where they start believing that the continuity of the existing Democrat administrations
Would
was
have done the
improved
same
in.
thing.
Yeah,
Would have done
no,
the same thing. A
I,
lot of
I
people are saying that the Democrat establishment would have done the same thing
no,
on this
I
one.
disagree with that. I think
You should have seen Kamala's speeches. So there were a lot of threatening statements against Iran.
I'll tell you what.
Hmm.
These people have little continuity. The IRGC
enough.
diplomats who talk to the
Okay.
Americans, they're the same guys.
No, fair
They're the
enough.
same IRGC folks.
Hmm.
What happens is that people in the Democrat foreign policy architecture, the Anthony Blinkens, the Jake Sullivans of the world, who were basically the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor of Biden, have had their own area of expertise dealing with the West Asians.
Mhm.
Now, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are also able negotiators, but they're not West Asia experts. I think that's where the difference comes in, because Blinken and Sullivan, these folks are actually West Asia watchers. They're like academics of sorts. And Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner they're sort of real estate guys. Doesn't take away their negotiating ability, but I think every US team has different context about the Iranians and they interpret it differently, and then the person pushing the buttons in the end, to his great discredit, has been Donald Trump. Because I think if you advise him a certain way, and if you give him a very grand picture of what he thinks he'll be able to achieve out of it, he changes his mind very often. So I think we've been seeing that the hard way.
I think to conclude our conversation, the last aspect that we're going to cover after 1 month of war is, where does India stand? A lot of people are saying that India is not taking a very strong stance. We should have been more pally with the Iranians. Some are saying that we should have been more pally with the Israelis. Some have gone on to the extent of saying that we should launch Operation Sindoor 2.0 against the Pakistanis, which I feel is hilarious.
That would be imprudent,
Yes.
extremely.
Yeah. So of course it's all on Twitter. It's not like the professionals who, I think they know very well what the consequences are. So I'm just saying that, where does India stand, and what do you think has been, like, our pros, and what do you think has been our cons?
Dude, I think
Good.
that the Modi government, the Jaishankar foreign policy architecture, has dealt with this situation quite decently. I don't think that any of the disruptions caused in West Asia were directly or indirectly our fault.
Yes.
The conversation uh, between the Iranians and the Americans were disrupted by the Americans. They decapitated the Iranian leadership. The Iranians started striking economic infrastructure all over West Asia, and the world got affected. And Indians have had a concern about our own energy security around it. But beyond that, I think that we have tried to keep a channel open with the Iranians. We have a pretty decent, warm relationship with the Gulf Arab state and the Israelis as well. I think we've tightroped this quite well. And we've tightroped this in a time where the rope to work on when you're tightroping something has gotten very narrow.
Narrow, it is broken down,
Yeah.
bro. It's broken
and
down. It's
uh, and,
gone. Khatam ho gaya
and
hai.
and despite that, we've been able to secure our movement of supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. Despite that, we've been able to
Ashura Meda.
yeah,
Hormuz literally means Ashura Meda.
yeah,
Crazy how the Ashura thing is coming back. It
exactly. And
was.
yeah, we've been able to sort of have our own relationship and our back channel with the Iranians going on without offending the Americans and the Gulf Arab states too much, without disrupting any of their operations. I think going forward, Gulf Arab states will also start speaking the same language that we have been, that we want to decrease hostilities, we want to come back to a peaceful setup, we want to stop the energy disruptions in this area. Now, India's diplomatic stance came during a challenge when IRIS Dana was shot by the Americans off the coast of Sri Lanka,
That's
and,
just
and
so
there's yeah,
pathetic.
and
Pathetic.
that was sort of, I think, in military terms,
A war crime.
yeah, I think it was overstated. It was not required. I don't really know what the Department of War or the American Navy was trying to achieve with that, but that is effectively a ship that they shot down, which is not even in the area of operations. It was not located in West Asia at the time. It was shot near the coast of Sri Lanka, and I think at that time, because it was leaving from India, there was a lot of domestic opposition that stated that the government of India should have done more to harbor them, to protect them from this war. Now, that's a complicated debate. International shipping is complicated, maritime military engagement is complicated. So, that's not something in principle that I would blame on the External Affairs Ministry. So I think we've tightrope this fairly well. We've strengthened our commitment to non-alignment, which has been a bipartisan
Yes.
view. It started with Nehru, and Narendra Modi, to his credit, has not really deviated from it. Jay, back to you. I'll get your view on the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
thing.
I mostly agree because I think there is no other way to deal with a situation like this, and I'm pretty sure if we were even being ruled by the Congress establishment, they would have probably done the same thing.
Yeah,
So because overall India's foreign policy hasn't changed at all.
yeah,
It is a Nehruvian foreign policy
yeah,
that's been consistent
yeah,
since 1947.
yeah,
Even though we've taken a pro-Israeli turn, and that had its own reasons and limitations because we were not getting any type of support from the Arab countries
yeah,
to fight our own insurgencies and fight Pakistan.
yeah.
So, from that point of view, even after that, our visits to the Palestinian Authority has been consistent. Modi has been awarded by the Palestinian Authority as well.
Yeah.
So, our foreign policy hasn't really changed. And within this whole conversation, I think there is another aspect that we're forgetting is we're hardly talking about uh, the uh, the invasion that has happened of southern Lebanon. And
Yeah.
sorry, after agreeing to you about the India's aspect, I thought in conclusion I should cover this as well because now what
I
has
think
happened
two
is that
UN fighters have UN
yes,
peacekeepers
yes,
have also died there.
yes, and the thing is that they have the Israelis have totally uh, taken over southern parts of Israel, specifically areas where they think that Hezbollah was active, and they have taken out orders which
Southern
is
parts of Lebanon. I think you accent.
sorry, southern parts of Lebanon, where Hezbollah was active, and they've said that they've given out orders which are very very similar to the orders that they've given out in Gaza.
Right.
So it's a very very tense
To
situation.
evacuate, otherwise you'll be
Yes, yes,
bombed.
yes. It's a very tense situation, and let's see where it goes. And thousands of people have been killed in Lebanon as well,
Yeah.
in constant bombardment. And still, the thing is that you just fought a 1 year war, almost a year long war with Hezbollah, and the whole point of the war was to decapitate Hezbollah. You killed most of their leaders, and still Hezbollah suddenly rose above the ranks and
Yeah.
started firing rockets.
I think
Just it's crazy. Like how has again coming back to your point, the self serving system that the Iranians have created is something that is baffling to a lot of security experts because this is a system which does not really require any type of firm leadership. It
and
is
they
highly decentralized,
and
and
I
because
think
of
they
its
have good succession
exactly
systems.
exactly, and because it's so decentralized, you could have certain factions just rise up who were able
Yeah.
to hide themselves from earlier assaults and just start shooting. And
Yeah.
this is where I say this is a very long drawn war because Iran is a massive country,
Yeah.
massive country.
You
So
know.
if you get rid of one faction of IRGC here, there would be another faction coming up from that side.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
think Major General GD Bakshi, who people have very very mixed opinions about in this country.
including us.
But he said something fairly pertinent on a television debate, and he said, that point of decapitation strikes sometimes defeat its own purpose, because you don't leave anybody to talk to. So when decapitation strikes happen, you end up creating more sort of more splinter groups which have their own capabilities. So it also pushes you into more of a long drawn
Absolutely.
conflict.
Too, I'll draw a crazy early modern history example from this. When the Marathas were basically taking over the ruined Mughal Empire, and British had just made entry inside the Indian subcontinent. After the third battle of Panipat, even though on paper Marathas lost, the Afghans, the Duranis took a massive hit. They were totally devastated, and whatever loot that they were carrying was either raided by the Jats, then it was raided by the Sikhs, and by the time they reached Afghanistan, they were totally drained. So essentially, they did not win anything from that. And a lot of people say that in that war, the Afghanis came inside India, the Duranis came inside India on the request of the Rohillas. The Rohillas wanted the Duranis to decapitate the Marathas so that they can never come back. But once the Maratha leadership was effectively destroyed in that war, in that battle,
Factions arose.
the factions came up and they started raiding Delhi all over again.
Yeah.
And the Rohillas essentially were the biggest losing side in the
Yeah.
whole conflict. And eventually the British stormed in
Yeah.
because most of the parties, they just could not, have any reasonable person to negotiate. And I think that is exactly what's happening in
Yeah,
Iran right
I
now.
mean, decapitation
Yeah,
strikes don't
never
work.
help, never
They,
help.
they never help.
Yeah.
You cannot decapitate a
Yeah.
country's leadership
Yes.
and then expect any kind of dialogue. I think sometimes it strikes, to me, it strikes like as an intentional attempt to sabotage dialogue. Because the last guy, in my view, who I knew of personally, who could have held some kind of negotiation table, who could have been the one bad guy, but he's not really that much of a bad guy who you can still talk to. He's Islamic, scholarly like, but he's not really IRGC. Was Ali Larijani, and I don't think he should have been killed.
Yeah.
Many people are critical of the strike on him because he was one of the last few people who
Who
you
have
could
negotiated.
converse with. He wasn't in principle anti-West. He was a scholar. He
Used to
was,
write books on Kant, bro.
yeah, he was a major philosophy kind of a student. So I really don't understand the kind of leadership that the Americans are attacking here. I think domestically, maybe they think that they're attacking some desert folk, but the Persians have a rich philosophical literary culture. The Iranian leadership is extremely smart. They have a very high ratio of even PhDs. So, and that's part of the reason why they have proven to be so scientifically precise in their targeting in this
And their
war.
leadership, and they're
Yeah,
so organized, and then creating the whole axis of
yeah.
resistance.
And
And
by the way, this is no defense of the Iranian
no
state,
defense at all.
but let's not keep decapitating their strikes and let the more extreme guy come in to the point that you might actually create the resolve to make a nuclear weapon at any cost.
And
So you're strengthening that threat.
and imagine we're already seeing missile strikes on Tel Aviv. Like
Yeah.
just one enriched,
Yeah.
missile striking is
So
absolute
yeah,
devastation.
exactly. So Israel is hurting its own interest by
Yeah.
strengthening the resolve of the Iranians, and I think sometimes the attempt is to do exactly that, so you can play on the Iranian threat for much longer. Because the
Yeah.
more you push them into the corner, the more extreme retaliatory strikes you get from them, and then eventually Americans don't have many options left but to either keep you guarded or to strike the Iranians. The Israelis were, for example, greatly critical of the 2013 uh, discussions that Obama was having with the
15
Iranians.
nuclear,
Yeah, and
15 men nuclear.
yeah,
treaty
there was a
signed.
nuclear deal also, and I think that to the great
The
credit
worst
of
deal ever. This is the worst deal that has ever been
no, but
signed.
I think to the great credit of the Obama administration,
No, I'm talking about Trump. Trump.
yeah, but the Obama administration resisted pressure of the Israelis, and they did, which was fairly. I mean, we weren't at war in those days,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah, I
think
think we can just
we can conclude the
conclude the
conversation.
conversation.
I'll just circle back to my one last thought. I think after
Do not send in ground troops.
after yeah, ground troops would be disastrous.
Uncle Sam.
They would lead to consequences all over West Asia. I think the Indian Foreign Secretary perhaps could have signed a message to condolence about Khamenei before Iris Dana was sacked. I think that's the one error we made in our
Yeah.
foreign policy.
Yeah.
Jay, let's get your final conclusion
My
thoughts.
final concluding thoughts is that do not send in ground troops. I think it's high time that Trump does his taco move and claim victory. And I think the IRGC has also done enough to claim victory. I know Israelis are going to be pissed off, but I think this is the time that Americans can actually withdraw and just say that we're not interested anymore. And I know it's too late for that, but I'm still optimistic that it just happens. And number three is that this war is only and only solidifying the conservatives and the radicals on both the Israelis and the Iranian side, because Israel can then further its greater Israel agenda. It's a
Yeah.
map that we see on IDF uniforms as well. It's kind of like India's Akhand Bharat, very similar concept. And yeah, it's a very dangerous trajectory, and I hope the worst case scenario, it goes it goes nuclear. That's the worst case scenario. The
Yeah.
best case scenario is, and I know I'm pretty confident that the worst case scenario is not going to
It's not
happen.
gonna happen.
And the best case scenario is that this war drags on for another few months, and then finally
You know,
without ground invasion, one of the
yeah.
parties like, hey, bas,
Yeah,
army ka
it's
chakkar.
gonna be beyond visual range.
Yeah.
They'll use the Marines to pressure the Iranians.
Hmm.
They'll do some convoy and escort operations for global shipping with the Marines, but they won't use them to do a ground
Yeah, because
offensive.
this is
I
not
think American generals are
not
smart enough to
understand.
know that themselves. I also think one last prediction that I want to make before we conclude is that after the ammunitions are exhausted and even the Americans are entering a fatigue kind of
I
area,
think they've already
the
entered.
Iranian leadership has gone to tatters, which to a certain extent it has
Hmm.
also. I think Trump will eventually go back on everything and try to do another deal with the Iranians.
Hmm.
That is my prediction. I may as
Yes,
well be
हो
wrong,
सकता है, बिल्कुल हो
but
सकता है.
because he's the New York realtor businessman Donald Trump, he will come around and eventually do another deal with the Iranians and claim that as a victory.
Yeah.
That we decapitated half their leadership, we got them to do another deal, and I've changed the state of Iran. And
Yeah.
thank,
Could this, and I
thank
think
you to
I
our
think we can
troops.
conclude this
He'll do something like
yeah,
that.
we can conclude this conversation by asking ourselves, is this the last conflict in the Middle East? Keep that thought to yourself.
And
Thank
I
you
think,
guys.
Jay, maybe we can have another conversation around Lebanon.
Yeah, Lebanon. Next
The
episode
next
will be
episode we can do
Lebanon.
in Lebanon and maybe the possibility of a deal with Iran
Yes,
again.
yes.
And thank you for
Thank you so
joining.
much for joining us. Bye.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye.